嗨，大家好，很开心在线上见到大家。那今天是 C-LAB 未来媒体艺术节的第二个系列活动，也是 TouchDesigner 新媒体互动集线器的首场开跑日。那我们很荣幸能邀请到 Derivative 的技术总监 Markus HECKMANN，在这次的讲座中，以 TouchDesigner 视觉发展20年为题，为我们带出 TouchDesigner 一路以来的发展脉络。那同时也揭示了 TouchDesigner 从开发到现今运用上背后所蕴含的核心理念，以及这些理念如何具体化为 TouchDesigner 的操作特性，让使用者能用更直觉的方式将他们的想法付诸实现。那今天的讲者 Markus HECKMANN 除了是形塑 TouchDesigner 这套软体工具的核心人物之一，同时他也致力于教育活动的推广，并参与策划 TouchDesigner 高峰会。那我们能邀请到 Markus 作为首场活动的主讲者，对我们来说也非常的具有意义。那也为接下来以 TouchDesigner 为主题的系列活动提供了一个整体性的背景介绍与认识。那在正式开始之前，想简单的跟大家说明今天的讲座形式。我们首先会播放预录的讲座影片，大约20分钟。那之后讲师 Markus 也会在线上跟大家进行即时的 Q&A， 所以如果有任何的问题或者是想要回馈的意见，都非常欢迎留言在脸书。那我们会请口译员嘉伟来协助翻译。那接下来就让我们一起来欣赏今天的讲座影片。
To start, I would like to thank C-LAB for the opportunity to talk to you on occasion of this year's Future Media Art Festival. My name is Markus HECKMANN, and I'm a technical director with Derivative, the makers of TouchDesigner, and the reason why I'm here. While it is now November, this video was actually recorded in August. Some of the things I will talk about might have changed or become old news, but I hope all in all, this will be informative. During the next few minutes, I'll be looking a bit at the inspiration behind TouchDesigner, its core concepts, and also the current developments. For the uninitiated, TouchDesigner was conceived as a platform for developing real-time visuals for music, heavily influenced by the idea of modular synthesizers, where a collection of modules with various functions can be connected by the user into patches that ultimately generate the final audio output. Very analogous, operators in TouchDesigner function as these modules and can be combined to create audio synthesizers, such as this simple one, or these advanced ones by Felix Larreta and Pierluigi Vienna. Pierluigi is, by the way, using TouchDesigner to also prototype hardware development for physical synthesizer modules. One appeal of modular synthesizers is the exploratory approach to the machine itself. Sounds are generated by connecting outputs to inputs in a seemingly endless amount of variation. A novice might not fully comprehend each module's function, but will over time, and perhaps with the help of a patchbook, gain an understanding that eventually leads to an intricate knowledge on what the machine is capable of. Our approach follows that methodology since the beginning. In 2000, when Greg Homanek started TouchDesigner as a derivative of SideFX Houdini, the analogy could clearly be seen in the node-based approach of the software. Like the engineers in 1960 at Philips Research Lab in Eindhoven, who would listen in on their algorithms by connecting speakers to the circuits of their arithmetical units of their computers, in early versions of TouchDesigner, the data of operators could be viewed by scoping them in global viewers. A breakthrough, aided by the fast-paced development of computer graphics hardware, came though a few years later with the introduction of per-operator viewers, transforming TouchDesigner into a truly visual development platform. Data is passed through operators, and each data or signal transformation can be observed in real time on every step of the way. This change also helped with two more points of motivation: creating an environment that lowers barriers to technology and aids people's willingness to freely experiment. Our goal for accessibility to technology can also be seen in our foundation in interoperability. This is interoperability with devices, with protocols, and with other software tools, usually through native operators. We currently talk to over 80 pieces of hardware, protocols, and software packages. Our recent edition of Touch Engine now also transports TouchDesigner into third-party applications ranging from media servers like Front Picture Screenberry to content tools like Unreal. In our effort to promote the use of TouchDesigner, the Touch Engine API, which lies at the basis of these implementations, is available publicly to any third-party platform via our GitHub. On TouchDesigner's side, integration of protocols like NDI, or the ability to import FBX scenes and animations, as well as allowing for native playback and control of notch, allow us to exist unbounded in today's production ecosystem, where many software packages together play out their particular strengths to create the final experience. The current initiatives to add WebRTC support and continuing the effort to enable the import of VST plugins and adding more and more devices such as the Ouster 2 sees the map of interoperability grow further with every release. Exemplary for TouchDesigner's capabilities in interoperability is deadmau5's Cube version 3 stage show with its extensive use in all areas of the performance, and perhaps also going back to the audiovisual. For this production, the Canadian electronic music producer and DJ used in parallel at least 6 machines running TouchDesigner. Computers at both the front of house and on stage were responsible for interfacing between Ableton Live and TouchDesigner via TD Ableton, supplying a touchscreen-driven control surface communicating via OSC and MIDI, ArtNet-based animation and control of LED lighting fixtures, visuals for the video wall, and the cube responsive to the cube's position, as well as a full backup system. In the early days of developing the show, anybody on Twitch was able to follow deadmau5 along while he was learning TouchDesigner, developing ideas, and realizing concepts during notorious 18 to 48-hour live-streamed marathons. With this ever-expanding feature set comes the increase of complexity and the challenge to solve this on various levels in our development. Firstly, we try to break down difficult workflows into tangible building blocks that result in a set of operators, best described by the movie file intop, with its basic functionality to play a movie, but its extensive parameters and Python scripting functions, allowing for full control of loading, decoding, playback, and unloading. Another good example are the web-centric DUTs and the web render top. Each of them take a fairly complex undertaking, like creating a web server or web client, and breaking it down into a set of parameters and callbacks that can be experimented with also in tandem. A bit bigger, but still in the same realm, are the dynamics components. While initially solely targeting the bullet library, the collection of operators turned out to be fully adaptable to NVIDIA's Flex system, which was implemented short-term after being made available to us for integration. The result is an abstraction from the usual code base towards a visual approach, utilizing the familiar elements of geometries and animation channels. And as with most operators, also these come with a good amount of Python accessible and controllable functionality for times where a node-based solution felt unnecessarily complex. Another vector to approaching the complexity issue is the addition of workflows and tools that allow users to better structure or document their work. This started early on with the ability to collapse networks into components, continued with the ability to add custom parameters and extend a component's functionality with Python extensions. The interface itself saw updates with direct rollover help on parameters fetched from our documentation, the addition of examples for many operators accessible in a contextual manner via the snippets, and is now also furthered with the annotate component, allowing for easy commenting of grouping of operators and chains in a network. Surely, the initial idea was simple. Enter text into a colored box, yet we soon realized that this could be so much more. An annotate component is by default not much more than a container component directly drawn onto the network pane with some additional functionality regarding grouping operators, etc. But when looking at it a bit closer, it reveals itself as being a greatly useful tool for embedding user interfaces directly into your network, allowing not just for underlying graphics, but also overlaying the network with possibly interactive elements. Placing parameters, for example, from different operators contextually in close proximity to their function will greatly improve understanding of networks. Displaying additional information on the real-time state of operators will help during development. Apart from this, the annotate component also will enable far better guided educational material directly based in TouchDesigner. Now, something else that might be best appreciated via the annotate component currently is perhaps our recent switch from OpenGL to Vulkan. This is future-proofing TouchDesigner and directly opening up enhancements like much better user interface rendering on high-resolution displays, the overhaul of the panel rendering in general, and introduction of high performance and high quality 2D, 3D text rendering, resulting in the clean fonts that can be seen when zooming in and out of an annotation, or what we look here, formatted text rendering, replicating Python syntax in a component or in a geotext component as well. The increased complexity, though, also shows creatively in the projects our community is realizing. TouchDesigner is an environment that tends to speak to the whole bandwidth of creative technologists in all fields of the audiovisual arts, including artists, designers, and developers, and of course, those that are all of them in one. Projects like GSNP's DALI Lives, a machine learning enabled interactive piece where DALI converses with visitors, to Think and Sense recent Kadokawa Lobby point cloud installation, and the variety of kinetic installations that have been created over the last years, all speak to the diverse usage of the software. When Derivative is starting development of features for TouchDesigner, a lot of insight comes from watching our community work. We see people like Paketa12 post workshops and tutorials that make creative use of operators in ways we hadn't thought about. We also see projects that break into industries in which previously TouchDesigner not necessarily played a role in, but now helps streamline processes or make certain productions accessible. Control Room 42, a project by Belgian broadcaster RTBF, is a functional prototype of a fully customizable modular virtual production desk. The customizability allows for a tailor-made studio environment that can quickly be adjusted to different broadcast needs. As not so much dependent on specific hardware, it also costs 10 times less than an equivalent traditional studio and gives creatives a more intuitive and agile way of working as they are part of the configuration process for their environment. CR42 was started as a user experience project with the idea of uniting control room technicians behind a universal user interface. And after a year of development, now integrates video switching, picture-in-picture effects, video and audio playout, and more. Now, where broadcasters used to be the main source of televised live entertainment, The past 2 years have worked as a catalyst to a development that started with live gaming streams, diversified into fields like educational, as seen with Detmau's TouchDesigner sessions, and eventually morphed into new concepts for more traditional show setups of hosts and guests, music, and general conversation, but now with almost limitless possibilities through everything XR has to offer, plus a direct interaction with the show's viewer. During 2020, the Elsewhere sound space produced by Nora Norman of Hard Work Party on a microscopic budget was a virtual live music and comedy program on Twitch with an unpredictable show sequence controlled by the live chat and impulses of the cast, making the show more like VJing versus anything that has been scripted. Centered around an affluent host drifting in space in a pimped-out spaceship with a dysfunctional crew, TouchDesigner had a central role as the control user interface, the video playback, effect and compositing engine, real-time renderer and communication engine, as well as audio control, making it an all-encompassing show control environment. Quite similar, Dandy Does It, also streamed live on Twitch, is an entertainment show described to be strangely addictive and very much worthwhile checking out via the URL down here. It makes use of a lot of similar techniques, running 3 instances of TouchDesigner, which are responsible for 90% of the show. In particular, it is used for all the 2D, 3D rendering and compositing, camera tracking, and live Twitch chat trim interactions. Matja Urček of Dandy Does It learned TouchDesigner in a month's fast tracking via Alberts's HQ, which kind of brings me back to you, the community. As mentioned, our development is influenced to a good part by what we learned from the worldwide community and its members like yourself. Especially over the last year, people in the community undertook a massive effort to share knowledge that they had gained through their previous work. Stepping up to the plate right away was Alberts's 2020 HQ Championship, letting people compete in the first TouchDesigner eSport showdown under the all-seeing eyes of expert judges Matthew Regan, Greg Romanovic, Detmaus, and Notch's Matt Svoboda. The second iteration is upcoming in the next few weeks, but by the time you see this, it will be wrapped, so probably worthwhile checking out the recording of this. The 2-day live streamed event had TouchDesigners competing across 4 different 1-hour challenges for a chance to win prizes and get really creative, sometimes downright hilarious, demonstrating their skills. The championship is part of a larger undertaking by the Interactive and Immersive HQ. The HQ offers a comprehensive range of training models, certification, live streams, and coaching. More recently, Britain-based Music Hackspace has been hosting online TouchDesigner workshops as well as free monthly meetups hosted by William Chepp, featuring members of the community presenting their work, and breakout rooms for further discussion and sharing the ideas and techniques. These meetups that mentioned happen monthly, and please go to musichackspace.org to check out the calendar and see when they are happening next in November. We very highly recommend it, and usually somebody from us is also in those meetups and just in the to guide through the breakout rooms. A mainstay in the Japanese TouchDesigner community, Tokyo Developer Study Weekends, has been organizing excellent workshops for 5 years, the results of which are available to anyone via Patreon, where, by the way, quite a few of the community members can be found offering regular tutorials. As active and focusing on the Chinese community, Digital Fun has already organized 2 Asia summits, and as well as the virtual exhibition Flair in last November 2020. Going back to Europe, working on the creation of a learning platform for node-based software, the Node Institute in Berlin collects and curates TouchDesigner as well as VVVV courses aiming to eventually provide a full learning path. And closely related, Jan Krishan's personal project, alltd.org, is the grand unification of all the TouchDesigner tutorials from around the world into one website resource, with currently approximately 2,000 tutorials online for all skill levels. Of course, I'd also like to point you to the TouchDesigner Taiwan Facebook group as a place to get help and connect locally. We, Derivative, invite you, if you haven't already, to join our community on the Derivative Forum, where all of us are active, the TouchDesigner Discord channel, and the Facebook Help group, and keep up to date with our development by checking our website and, of course, also In Session, our monthly event where we invite community members to share their projects and we help them solve problems in them. We miss seeing everyone in person and look forward to seeing you all in real life somewhere soon, perhaps at an upcoming summit, which may or may not have been announced at that point. Thank you again for inviting me today and making this possible. I'm looking forward to meeting you a little bit in person in the following Q&A. Thank you very much.
谢谢刚刚 Markus 为我们带来的讲座。那我们现在就开放 Q&A 的提问。那如果你有任何的问题的话，欢迎留言在我们的脸书。那我们
Thank you everyone for the video. Now we open up for question and answers. If you have any questions, please leave it at the Facebook live stream. Thank you.
那我们在等待问题的同时，我这边也想要先做一个提问。
I would like to start by the question.
那在刚刚的讲座中有提到说，社群对于 TouchDesigner 的发展决策有非常直接的影响。那其实前2周我们才刚结束了Processing Community Day 的活动，那也看到 Processing 的成长，基本上可以说是跟着社群走。如果社群参与是影响软体发展的其中一个关键因素，想请问就 Derivative 来说，如何在开发或是增加新功能的过程中与社群沟通，并且取得共识？
So in your talk, you mentioned about the critical and important roles of communities in your development process. And we just have in the past 2 days, 2 weeks in Taiwan about the processing community events. And we see that it's been growing very fast as well. So since you mentioned that it's very important for you to accommodate and respond to community requests and also their suggestions, how do you put these ideas, suggestions into your development process when you are thinking about new features?
So yeah, we're in active contact with large parts of the community via the online channels or via personal discussions, calls, meetings, whatever. And we have to categorize basically, okay, what can we do right now? What fits into our current development process? And what can be slotted in a bit later? So we track those ideas, we write them down, we sit on them, we develop them further, and we see how it fits in. So things don't necessarily always show up right away. But you will see through discussions online that we're picking up ideas and developing them further and then eventually integrating them in the software. With the quick release cycle that we have, or fairly quick release cycle that we have, you see those incremental changes come in quite quickly. I hope that's kind of the answer to your question.
我们其实常常会透过不同的，比如说面对面的讨论，或者是线上这些讨论啊、电话会议等等，一起去收集大家不同的想法跟意见。当然，在收集这么多意见之后，我们一定会去考虑现在的开发过程里面有哪些可以立即的实习下去，哪些可以立即的融入到其中，哪一些呢可能要在进一步发展之后才有可能会纳入在我们的这些的新的更新的内容当中。所以其实它是一个渐进式的过程，那当然会有个优先次序的排列。不过收到这些的建议或想法之后，我们都会去追踪它，然后去思考有没有机会把它发展成我们之后未来的功能。尤其其实现在各位看到这一个 TouchDesigner 它其实更新的速度相对还蛮快的，所以其实这些渐进式的变化，通常大家很快就会看到我们在更新的过程里面把这些新的想法纳入其中。
I might also mention things like the phaser chop. There's a fairly recent addition, is a direct result of collaborating with the community, by the way.
比如说最新更新的这个 phaser chop， 其实就是跟社群一起讨论、一起分享之后，最后所发展出来的成品，跟各位看到的结果。
好，那我这边有一个观众的提问，想请问说，因为疫情的关系，许多工作坊都改为线上举办，那想请问 Markus 对于这些活动有什么样的建议呢？
So we've seen the questions from Facebook. It mentioned that because of the pandemic, many workshops now is moved to online versions. When we are conducting workshop like this online, what kind of suggestion do you have for them?
That's a good question. I'm having trouble with the online workshops myself because of direct feedback from people. It's easier to gauge in the room the understanding in the room. Perhaps my personal suggestion would be keep it small, and so that you're able to focus on people. Yeah, that's my main suggestion. Don't, because it's online, don't think you can deal with 40 people at the same time. I think keeping it smaller is better.
我自己其实也对于这个线上工作坊的运作模式还不太习惯，因为我习惯比如说在面对面讨论的时候，可以直接去感受到大家的反应，大家有没有听懂等等。所以如果要举办线上工作坊的话，我的建议给各位是让这个规模不要办得太大。虽然是在网络上举行，但是呢没有办法一次跟40个人互动，所以我会建议让大家把这个规模办得比较小，让大家有更多机会可以直接交流，来促进彼此之间的沟通。
And just thinking about it again, also, I mentioned it, check out Music Hackspace. I'll post the link in the chat in a moment, but they have a very well going process of general teaching and then going into breakout rooms to look on particular issues of users. So going into smaller groups then, and having people who tutor then these smaller groups. Yeah, I found that this works really well as well.
那我刚才在简报里面跟演讲里面有提到过这个 Music Hackspace 的这个团体，他们所做的这个工作坊，其实我觉得很建议让大家可以参考一下。他们其实一开始的时候会让大家在同一个空间里面进行大概的教学跟简介之后就进入到分组讨论，让每一个小组可以去进行各个单一问题的讨论。这样的话也能够容纳比较多的人，同时让大家能够更加聚焦。这个是我会比较建议的做法。那这个的连结的话，我稍后再提供给各位。
好，那我这边还有另外一个问题想要向 Markus 提问，就是化繁为简似乎是 TouchDesigner 一个很重要的核心理念。那这个理念如何影响着 TouchDesigner 每个阶段的转变跟发展的方向？
So it seems that streamlining and trying to make something from complex to simple as one of your commitments and your ideals in TouchDesigner. So I wonder how this kind of principles, streamlining principles, influence your development process.
Yes, we do try to keep things simple-ish. The more complex the requirements, the more complex the execution will be also inside TouchDesigner. But we look to break down these complexities into building blocks that can be digested easier. So it's not, you don't have, or you shouldn't write a massive amount of code first to then try to debug separate modules. You should be able to put down a node and have certain functions in there that you can understand by itself. And then learning more nodes and learning how they connect and how they interact then gives you the possibility to create complex systems. I think it's really nicely shown despite that probably will change, but how point clouds can be used in TouchDesigner now. Knowing certain nodes will give you huge abilities to interact, to manipulate, and to control point clouds.
那就像刚才主持人提到的，其实化繁为简或者相对来说比较简单，是我们一直想要努力的目标。那毕竟呢，我们觉得如果这个要求越高的时候，那执行上面就会越困难。所以我们希望把这些很大的这些架构，能够把它化繁为简，或者是把它化整为零之后，做成比较小的、比较容易消化的这些群组跟模组之后，让大家能够比较容易理解。我们的理想情况并不是让大家，比如说一定要写很多程式码之后呢，才能够去控制整套系统，才能够开始去作业。我们希望大家能够了解这个节点的概念之后呢，透过几个节点之后，进而去了解彼此之间怎么控制、怎么互动，然后有怎么样的发展的机会。比如说我们在最近更新之后，然后前一阵子的更新之后，各位看到现在可以透过这样的模式去操控点云。那点云这个系统呢，的确透过这个节点的方式之后呢，就可以更容易的去操作，还有去控制跟管理。
那不知道线上的大家还有没有什么问题想要提问？那在等待
Any other questions?
那在等待的同时呢，我也想补充一下刚刚Markus 讲到讲座中提到的 Billiam Schipper 还有 Matthew Reagan， 其实也都会参与我们接下来 TouchDesigner 的系列活动。那大家也可以持续的关注我们。那如果大家没有更多的问题的话，那我们就在这边谢谢 Markus， 那也谢谢我们今天的口译，那谢谢大家的参与。
So if no further question, we'll close the sessions. Thank you, Markus, and thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you very much for having, and hopefully see you soon in real life.
谢谢，
希望很快可以在真实世界当中见到大家，谢谢，
谢谢，拜拜。
Bye-bye.